What's up, Mayank?
What's up, Abhinav? How's it going, man?
Good. Good, man. Actually, we're wearing the same T-shirt today.
Flexing 10K, right?
Yeah. I was actually just posting on Instagram that we're about to start. So,
Nice. Great, man. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to our fifth episode of Whiteboard Live. This is a show that Abhinav and I have started that we do weekly. Every Thursday at 9 p.m., we are going to be doing lives and we'll be answering your questions and discussing topics that help for all those interested in design and product. Last week, we spoke about compounding, different types of content, how you can compound not just in terms of self growth, but also in terms of your career, in terms of your actual and perceived value that's there in the industry. And let's see what we talk about tonight.
yeah, man, for sure. I can see, Mayank, that the background has changed. You're back to Bombay.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, man. So as soon as COVID started, I was still in Bangalore thinking or like maybe hoping that offices will resume and work, everything will get back to normal pretty soon. But that didn't happen. So I'm back home. And let's see when I will be back in Bangalore. Like mostly whenever everything resides. But that depends on how saturated I get in Bombay as well.
Got it. Yeah, I can see a lot of folks coming in. What's up, everybody? Good evening to you, all of you. Divya, Pratik, Teja. What's up?
Thanks, Vikram. What's up, guys? How's it going?
So, Mayank, what do you want to talk about today? I think what we can do is I've been thinking about actually I don't know. I'm still composing my
Let's
thoughts.
get started with how the week was, bro. How was your week? What have you been up to?
This week I have been sandwiched, right? I feel like I've been sandwiched between the Cohort 1, where there's a lot of stuff happening. I'll talk about that. As well as Cohort 2, which the application is like officially just opened this week. Yeah, it was this week. So like for Cohort 1, we have a lot of exciting stuff, which is we put together one single document, one single page with everybody's profiles with all of their work. I got a lot of interest on this, put this up on Twitter. A lot of people are hiring for designers. So I've sort of been just coordinating between companies mostly for the Cohort 1. A lot of them want to check out the profiles so they can hire. Besides that, there's a few companies who are also interested in capstone projects. So that's another thing we're doing, where the final project for the cohort, we've actually gotten real problem statements, like current problem statements from startups / companies, I'll say. And the whole idea with the capstone projects is it is your final project of the cohort where you can actually do it. But also what's more interesting is these problem statements for the capstone projects are not really a hiring assignment type project where it's like some random conceptual thing. It's actually a current this thing. So working on these problem statements from startups is almost going to be like the same experience of actually interning at that company. Like this is the kind of stuff you would get to work on if you were an intern at this company. So we have those happening. I think there's a total of, we have a good amount. I don't want to talk about the companies yet. I think that publicly we'll reveal that way later.
Yeah.
But there's, we've got a SaaS company, we've got one fintech company, got someone from travel, we've got someone from fitness. So let's see that's going on. Yeah.
That's great, man. My entire week went in giving feedback to the first cohort. So for all those who are watching this live, a lot of our cohort members have been publishing case studies and posting them online. So for all those who want to check it out, you guys can just search 10K designers in residence on LinkedIn. And all those who have put that as their working status on LinkedIn, you can check out their case studies. And a lot of them have been, like both of us know that a lot of them have been uploading case studies regarding one of their tasks, which was to design an e-commerce app. So that was a great project, but then definitely that's still a problem, a design challenge, right? It's not something that you would be working on probably when you're working in a company. So the capstone project is going to help a lot for sure.
Yeah. In fact, one thing we are going to start doing, a lot of you guys might find this super interesting, is when we, so far the Instagram and Twitter for 10K designers, we haven't really been posting much. But now that we have a lot of good projects coming from people, this is going to start. So we're going to start posting a lot of projects from the Cohort 1 members on Instagram as well as on the Twitter. So I think that'll be a much simpler way to be able to just like browse all the work from everyone.
Yeah, bro. What's also great about capstone projects is, like, we were discussing this earlier, that when we were chatting with our cohort members, some of them were lagging behind in terms of their tasks. But then once the seriousness hits, and once they see the Notion doc that is being shared and the people it's being shared with, all of them get really serious that, okay, we really need to buck up because this shit just got real.
True, man. I think it's a good type of pressure. You get to accelerate your process. Yeah.
So when's the registration starting? When's the next cohort starting?
So the registrations are open. It opened just this week. We have a good amount of people who applied. Besides that, we've started rolling out offers. So in fact, a lot of people have already confirmed. So part of the cohort is already actually done, already closed. For the remaining, we're going to be doing it slowly, and officially the cohort starts on September 1st. So within the next 2 weeks, it's going to close completely. Yeah.
So for those who haven't registered yet and or applied yet and want to, go to 10kdesigners.com and check out the masterclass application link, see the program, see the courses and modules that we have over the course of the entire program, and you can check it out.
Yeah, man, for sure. So Mayank, dude, tell me more about your credit case study that you published this week.
Man, so you know about this. I had written this case study 2 months ago. Like, it's been really long since I was writing, but like it happens in a lot of startups and companies, that there's a lot of information you have to be careful about in terms of sharing, especially since it's a startup. There are a lot of things which can be taken up by competitors and used to get ahead of you, and a lot of other factors. So it's best not to just write and publish. It's best to get it verified from your seniors and from other members of the company who are responsible for any information that goes outside. So that took a while, but then that was done. So now it's online. I can actually share the link with you guys on the comments. It's about gamification. So
you want to actually, we can actually just go through it. Why don't you share your screen and let's walk through it? Because I don't think you've had the chance to talk about it. So
sure, let's do that.
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. Can you see my screen, bro? Okay. Yeah. So guys, this was my case study. It's called On Our Way to Win. And it's kind of like a pun because I played around the fact that we were coming up with our upcoming section called Cred Win, which would have a lot of games which the users could play to win rewards. And this was our case. Why On Our Way to Win was because I was working on parts of this section. So my work revolved around creating the games and including involving the games as a part of the product, like integrating it. So I'll start. So now that I've given you the background information, okay, for those who don't know what Cred is an app that focuses on promoting good behavior by giving rewards to those who pay their credit card bills on time. And it's also a lifestyle app. A lot of people think it's a payments app. It's not. It's a lifestyles app. So my Cred Win. And here I explain the lifestyle flow, like how would people normally go about the lifestyle flow and see rewards. And there were two currencies on the app that are Cred Coins and Cred Gems. Now, coins are a member earns coins by paying. They earn equal amount of coins, equal to the amount that they are paying, and they earn gems by referring their friends as members as well. So no one on Cred is called a user. Everyone who uses the Cred app is called a member, because that's what Cred is. Cred's a club. It's not just an app or a product. So before we decided to start with our game, we decided that we would see if games would be a good option for having on our app. And for that, we ran an experiment called POC experiment. That's a proof of concept in which we ran a game in-house, and we checked what the responses were and how did members respond to it, as well as people in the company. And we saw there was a really good response in terms of the number of participants, how many coins were spent, and the total number of times the games were played by everyone. So while we decided we would include games, we also wanted to add more layers to the gamification aspect of it, such that it was not just games that the users would play and go. They would be much more engaged with it, and they would want to keep coming back to it. So this was done through games, of course, and also through leaderboards. Now, leaderboards was something, when we started thinking about leaderboards, we thought of not just having leaderboards for the games, but for creating a framework, creating leaderboards as a framework level, such that it could be used for non-gaming aspects as well. For example, who made the most amount of, who spent the highest number of coins in a certain period of time would win a reward. So that is a way in which you're creating engagement and gamifying non-gaming aspects of user behavior as well. So I'll talk about the first part, that is creating the games and the game HUD. That is the heads-up display. Now, for those who don't know what a heads-up display is, it's basically what you see in every game in the form of information that you keep looking at when you're playing the game, like as information such as how many lives are left, what your score is, what's the highest score, how much time is remaining. All that important information comes up as a form of a display called a heads-up display. So thinking about what games we would play, we could create, there were a lot of options, but the main objective of the game for us, as launching it for the first time, was we wanted to create nostalgia. We wanted to create games that would make you think of old games which you really enjoyed. And arcade games and 8-bit games come under that category. So we decided we'll start off with that. And we thought of creating similar games but giving our own twist to it, such that calling them Bill Breaker, Flappy Plane, and Rescuer Red. So these were the first 3 games that I worked on. And the game mechanics were very simple. To play the game, you had to spend coins. Once you would play the game, you would have limited number of lives. After your lives would get over, you would have to spend more coins. So that way we were creating engagement in the form of coin spend. And since we had the heads-up display, which the user would keep going back to while playing and keep them engaged. And there was, of course, a prize because like you would not want to keep playing a game unless there's a prize or something to look up to, right? So also one thing we noticed that whenever you want members to play a game, or anyone to play a game, members or players always play a game for 2 reasons. The motivation, there are 2 kinds of motivation behind them: intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. And this is something which I really like about the case study, because I paid a lot of emphasis on this after I learned about it, that intrinsic motivation is a kind of motivation that comes from within, comes from the satisfaction that, okay, you're achieving something and that you want to do it for your own benefit. You can take Fitbit, for example, right? Fitbit uses intrinsic motivation really well, such that users use Fitbit or CultFit, the apps and all their products, because they want to get fit, and they are doing that for themselves. They get that inner motivation. And extrinsic motivation is the second part of motivation that comes when you're from external factors, such that money or a trophy. Those are things that are offered to you for playing the game or for winning the sport. And that is an extrinsic motivation, that if you win something materialistic or external, you want to engage more in that. So the games were a part of intrinsic motivation, that as the user would play, as the members would play, they would feel more motivated. And the leaderboards were a part of extrinsic motivation, because you could compare yourself. There was social proofing. There you could compare, you could see what your rankings were, and you knew what the prize was as well. And another factor behind intrinsic motivation was that we chose the games very carefully, because we wanted to make sure intrinsic motivation is playing an important part. And that was done through skill-based games. There was no luck-based games like a lottery or a jackpot For these games, they were purely skill based. How good you are at playing, how good you are at observing the patterns, and how well you are getting accustomed to the higher levels in the game. So then I moved on to the main game components, which consists of course, the main controllable character, your obstacles, the score, the themes, the way in which your score increases and decreases. Like if you hit an obstacle, your score could decrease, and if you get a combo, your score might increase. And also, a really good part about playing games or being a part of games is that you're in a fictional world, that there is a different story or narrative to it, which is why people play so many games or video games. It's because it's kind of like an escape as well. So after we decided what the games would be, what the theme would be, and how everything would work, what the mechanics would be, we decided how would we maintain fair gameplay. Now this was done in multiple ways. One was deciding the screen size, since every phone, the game size, since every phone has a different screen dimension or resolution, screen dimension. Some screens would be larger in width or bigger in height, and some might be smaller in width or smaller in height. So the best way to maintain fair gameplay was to maintain a ratio of 3:5, which is what we did. You could decide another ratio as well, but we felt 3:5 was an optimal ratio to maintain fair gameplay for every player on Cred. So this is the visual design of the games. This includes the game components and elements and obstacles. This is how the game would look when the user is playing it. And then we move on to our leaderboard. And now, as I told you guys about the leaderboard, I was working towards a bigger aspect of a leaderboard, not just for games, but in terms of making a leaderboard framework that could be used for non-gaming aspects as well. So a leaderboard would have multiple states as well, in terms of while the user is playing the game, when the user has finished playing the game, and when the results are out there, and when the user has not joined the game yet but wants to see how many people are playing. That if there are a lot of people are playing and if it looks worth playing, I would want to be a part of it. So there were 3 states in which the player is yet to participate, the player is already participating, and when the time's up. So this, and there was also a very defined user flow in terms of how the user could access the leaderboard. The user could access the leaderboard from the game and return back to the game at the point at which they left, or they could access the leaderboard from different points of the app as well. There are a lot of use cases in terms of when the game is being played, right? Like if the user has run out of their lives, they would have to spend more coins to get their lives. If the user wants to see what kinds of prizes are there while they're on the leaderboard, so they could just select on the prize button, and then a bottom sheet would come up which shows the prizes that are there. If the time period for which the game was live was over and you have not won, you could also go to another screen. You could exit the game. If you have won, you could go to the rewards section to see what have you won, or like whether you've come first or second, or what ranking, on the basis of your ranking, what have you won. And also there you have to consider certain edge cases, such that what if there is a delay in you getting your outcome, or whether you're a winner or whether you won or lost. So in that case, there would be a bottom sheet which would show that we are fetching scores, and that it will take a while, because you cannot just leave the user midway. That's bad experience. So as I showed it in the form of visual design, I explained it in words as well, what the use cases were. And another exciting thing during this project was that while I was working on the existing design system, or using the existing designs that we patterns and colors that we had on Cred, we also shifted our design framework or design system to Copper Synth. Our previous design system is called Fabric, and our current design system is called Copper Synth, which is neomorphism. So neomorphism is the framework, and Copper Synth is a theme, or it's one of the parts. So this is how the leaderboard, these are how the leaderboard states looked like when implemented in the Copper Synth framework. And I honestly love Copper Synth. It's just sick. It's crazy good. And then I shared my learnings and takeaways after explaining about the proof of concept experiment, after sharing about what the thinking went behind, what was the thinking that went behind when designing the games and leaderboard, and what the results were. coming to the learnings and takeaways. So there were two primary learnings. One was that we hit a roadblock after our first launch, which is that we were not getting the expected outcome that we wanted in terms of the number of users seeing the game and the number of users actually playing it. So we realized that the number of users seeing the game card or the reward card were a lot, but very few people actually participated. And that was because of the way in which we were displaying the game to the user. Earlier, we showed the game to the user in such a way where it was not giving an affordance that it is a game. But then later on, what we changed is we changed our creatives. That is the way in which the games would be displayed. And that brought a big difference. Like that shows, like here it shows before and after the relaunch, what were the number of participants, how many coins were spent before, and how many coins were spent after. And that's at least 5 times, it's 5x of what it was before. So it shows that our hypothesis was correct and the results were improved. There was a huge increase and improvement in engagement. The second really important and critical learning which was there was again in terms of gameplay. Like I mentioned earlier, what we did for gameplay was that we maintained the same size for our game, that is the 3:5 ratio. But then one thing which we also realized is that there was a difference in the speed of the gameplay. That is, on some phones the game was running really smoothly for the users, but for other phones the game was running really fast and the user couldn't keep up. And there was an evident difference in the speed of the game for multiple devices, which would lead to unfair gameplay. And we cannot afford to release it in that state, because that raises the questions of whether it's fair or not. So we found the reason behind that, which was the asynchronous behavior between a frame rate of the game and the refresh rates of the phones. So for those who don't know, current phones like OnePlus, iPhone, etc. have a really high refresh rate, like 90 Hertz and 120 Hertz. You can read more about it here. In my case study, I mentioned the link here. Like you click on the text here and it shows you the link, an article, a really in-depth article about what frame rate is, what refresh rate is, and what does it mean by asynchronous behavior. So I told you about what the refresh rate is. I'll tell you about frame rate. Frame rate is basically the speed at which your games or animations move, right? Every animation has multiple frames, and hence the speed at which every element of a game moves is called the frame rate. And refresh rate is basically the rate at which your app or your screen refreshes. So both need to be happening at the same speed or at the same rate, which is why the optimal solution for this was to maintain the same refresh rate. That is, a phone with 60 Hertz refresh rate should have the game running at 60 FPS, that is frames per second. And that's it. This was, then I moved to the conclusion of my case study, where I show what I learned, that what were the main learnings for me, which was, of course, the concept, design thinking, and implementation of gamification. I learned how to prototype a lot. This was my first time hands-on prototyping learning experience in terms of using Principle as a prototyping tool. And also, I moved from one design system to another. Right? While we were shifting and moving to neomorphism, I played a decent part in converting existing app screens and flows into neomorphism. So seeing how that works in a startup it was a great learning curve for me. So yeah, this was my case study. And thanks a lot for all those who've given so many claps. Hope you guys liked it and learned a lot. So yeah, bro, Abhinav.
Nice, man. I think what's really interesting also is that you have to work on a bunch of stuff that 99% of designers would not get the chance to, in the sense that the whole implementation of games, right? Firstly, it's a very as a designer, it's kind of rare to be able to work on games, especially if you're a regular UI UX designer. But then also, it's interesting to see all of these issues come up that from the outside you would never guess, which is things around frame rate and refresh rate, which is something like a designer never needs to know. right? You don't need to know about it. But then I guess that is one of the parts where you have to be comfortable with ambiguity as a designer, which is these are things that nobody will teach you because nobody actually needs it. But if something like this does come up, you need to be then able to go into your research and get all of these things to figure it out.
And definitely completely aligned. And what's amazing is this was not the only thing that I was working on during my internship. There were so many other things which I was working on, and it was great because there are so many things that you're working on simultaneously. Like, of course, there can also be a trade-off in terms of whether you're giving good amount of attention and work that is required for everything. But I was able to, I think I was able to, I like to believe so. And definitely, man, this project was something which, it was very exciting. Like, even hearing about games would get beginner designers really excited and wanting to delve more into it. And it's about, like you said, mentioned previously, being ready to being ready to dive into uncomfortable situations and then figuring stuff out, like not getting intimidated by it.
True. And I think what's also interesting is, in terms of the gamification as well, what's interesting is you got to work on gamification as well as games, right? Which is when somebody sees this, they might not necessarily see that difference, which is gamification is very different from games, which is gamification is the usage of game-like elements. But the minute you put a real game in it, it's not gamification anymore. It's a game.
Right.
So it's almost like most people that will be working on gamification, in the future, or if you've already done it, you would know that most gamification is not including games in your app. That's not what gamification is. It's about how do you use game elements, which I guess you guys were able to do with things like Leaderboard. But then it's also interesting that it was gamification of a game. So there was the game as well as the gamification layer there. Yeah.
Definitely. Like, all those who want to know, like, exactly, if I had to summarize what gamification is, it's basically using creating game-like behavior in non-gaming elements. That is, for example, you can take Unacademy, for example. If once you complete a milestone, you get a celebratory action. That is gamification, where you're creating game-like behavior in non-gaming elements. That is, the main objective is to study for your exams and all of that, but you're making that exciting and making the user feel good. That is done through gamification.
True, for sure. Dude, our chat is like super quiet. Either they're intimidated by the level of the case study depth, or they've sort of dozed off. Chat, I want to see some comments.
If you guys have any questions, you guys can drop them as well. Also, there are a lot of people who are watching but not enough likes. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. This is not done. Keep showing some action through the like and subscribe button, and also through the comments. Ask me questions about the case study or about anything else that we are working on as well, about 10K, anything that you want. But show some activity.
Yeah. And we're about halfway through right now. Let's talk about, let's take some questions. I don't think we have any questions. Okay, we have one. Tell me this, Mayank.
Why does copy on thread start with lowercase? Bro, we just felt like it looks really good when all the letters are lowercase. We noticed that while we were designing certain elements, and this is not when I was there in the company, this is what I was told, that when we were designing, someone tried everything in lowercase and it looked much better than words having their first letter as capital.
So is it basically a stylistic decision?
Correct. What other questions do you guys have? Okay, I'm seeing the number of likes increasing, so that's good. Is there non-dark mode? Monish Reddy asks. No, bro, there's no non-dark mode, which I think Chetan is going to preach and go wild because he loves dark mode. But yeah, CRED has no non-dark mode. But what we do emphasize on is contrast. So, for example, with the neomorphism, there was a lot of question regarding what about readability and what about factors like that. So one thing that we've paid a lot of attention to is that important information that you need, for example, your payments, your bank statements, and a lot of critical information. We show it on a white background because we don't want to affect the readability of the user. We do make sure of nuances like that, but again, we try to also have the neomorphic theme. So we are very careful with where we use neomorphism, because there was a lot of design Twitter was very active once Cred released neomorphism, but then after Big Sur, I think not many people are taking jabs on neomorphism, which is something which was expected as well, because if Apple does something, the entire world is like, okay, fine. If Apple is doing something, they're doing it for a reason. But if some new company is doing it, then they might not know what they're doing. But I feel we're at a good place.
And I think the older version of neomorphism, older version of the Cred app did have light mode.
Yeah, that's true. We did have light mode at that time. We decommissioned light mode, and now we have only one theme throughout the app, that's Copper Synth.
And I guess maintaining a light mode and a dark mode can become hard, because any feature you do, you then have to work on it. So I guess even with the older version of the Cred app, it's not like switching to light mode made all the screens light. It was just like the sort of main screens which were light.
Right.
Your inner flows were still, sort of the dark mode.
There are a lot of questions coming up now. So Sagar had this question: did you come up with the design framework for the games, or did you actually design those games? Also, what tools was? So design framework, I'm not sure what you're referring to in terms of design framework for the games, but what we decided was initially was the theme for the games, which was 8-bit. Yes, it was a team-based decision. We all decided that we would go with 8-bit as an initial theme for the games. And I did design the games, every part of the game in terms of the game elements, the obstacles, the themes, the characters, all of that, the animations as well. All of it was designed from scratch. Also, what tools were used? So, this is something, like it is a conscious decision that we right now at Cred, we use Sketch. We do not use Figma. It's because of our designs right now in terms of neomorphism, and shifting it to Figma will take some time. It does not happen easily just by importing the Sketch file. So right now we're still using Sketch. Later on, we are considering, let's see when we move to Figma. So I designed the elements of the game using Sketch and Illustrator and Photoshop, depending on what the requirement was, what was rendering properly. That depends on, while you're designing, you'll come to know better. For designing the animations, that is the frames, I had to design multiple frames and then either sit with the developer, or you could do it yourself using After Effects as well. And the screen-based animation, that is from one screen to another, in terms of the prototype, was done using Principle. So for character animation, you could use After Effects, but for screen-based transitions, you could use Principle or Protopie. I think I've answered your question. Yeah, bro. I saw some question regarding 10K masterclass as well.
Yeah, man. Let's mix it up. Let's talk about few 10K and then few general questions.
Sure.
Just nervous about selection and masterclass. Yeah, man. It's a bit of a time-consuming period for me as well, because I'm having to go through applications. But let's see. Hopefully, like some part of the cohort is already filled. A good chunk offers have already been sent. But then there's a bunch of applications that I haven't gone through yet. So I haven't gone through all of them. I'm sort of doing that day by day. How important is UX writing, which is balancing out your text, content, and visuals in your case study? Now, I'll give you a bit of an answer, then Mayank can answer, since he just wrote this case study, which is overall, with your case study, your purpose is storytelling. The story that you're telling is about your design process, which is why when people ask what's the format of case study, there's no fixed format. Your case study should talk about the process that you followed. And it's telling the story of how you got started and how you did it. And of course, you do need to balance both of these, content and visuals, while telling it, because most articles and content on the internet, there's this idea that most people don't read stuff starting from the top to the bottom. People skim through a page to see if it's worth reading, and then their eye falls at a particular point, and then they start reading from there. So as much as possible, your case study should allow for skimmability, where if it's just text, it's sort of harder to skim. Breaking that flow with images, it's a good idea. Mayank, you have any additional thoughts on this?
Yeah, bro, definitely. Adding to what Abhinav said, one thing you also need to realize is you use visuals when you want to explain things better, which you can't explain only through text. Like, it's better to write 100 words and add visuals than add 500 words just to explain one thing. Like, visuals add a lot, they help in better understanding, number one. Second, most of the designers or people who write use Medium for case studies. And you need to realize, just like Figma is a tool for designing screens and doing UI UX, Medium is a tool. Consider Medium as a tool for designing your case study. So that includes knowing when to show your visuals, when to show a GIF, when to show an animation. That includes knowing what to mention as bold, which heading to be used where, and what to be used as a quote. So all of this is also, it is designing a case study. You're writing a case study and designing a case study is very correlated, and you need to consider a Medium as a tool and not just something like Google Docs. Like, you're not just writing things, you're designing your case study, which is easier for a non-designer to understand. Always consider that you're writing for a non-designer. Always consider this. And I never considered my case study as UX writing. I just considered, as how I told you, me wanting to explain something to anyone who reads it. So I never considered it as UX writing. I just considered it as designing a case study.
What should one expect before joining? What do you need to know prerequisites? Mayank, I want to ask you this question, which is, I felt this with some of the applications and some of the responses.
Right.
A lot of people feel that the 10K Designer Masterclass is not made for beginners.
Oh, okay.
And I guess this has something to do with the landing page. I haven't 100% dived into this yet. I haven't had the time. But do you feel that or people who are in the masterclass as well, before applying, did you guys feel that it's not beginner friendly? I think maybe that is for me a little bit of design feedback, because I think I do need to iterate a little bit on the copy. So the copy right now is the first version of the copy that I wrote when we first launched. Yeah.
So I feel design-wise, it's the design school of the future. The objective is to make it look professional, because if it's kiddish, of course, it would not be taken seriously as well. And when you look at the copy, since it looks professional, for some it might seem that, okay, since everything looks so professional, it is for people who are already well versed with design to some extent and not for beginners at all. But for those who are been a part of the first cohort, if you see their case studies, if you see their tweets and whatever they mention on Twitter as well about the 10K Designers Masterclass, it is very beginner friendly. We don't spoon feed you or hold your hand and take you to the destination, but we give you a lot of direction. Our objective is to give you guys direction and to inculcate problem solving ability, such that whenever you come across a problem, now you know how to use design problem solving and design thinking to come up with your own solutions. So while it might look intimidating, which I feel every program does before you start actually doing it, the main objective is that all those who graduate will be able to figure things out for themselves when it comes to design.
Yeah, man. I feel like it is intimidating in some sense, which is it is a big commitment that you're taking, which is studying something by yourself on YouTube or something, YouTube, Udemy, wherever else, is a form of passive learning in some sense, which is you don't have any external, like the point you talked about extrinsic motivation. You don't really have extrinsic motivation when you're studying from online courses, because a lot of that has to come internally. Intrinsically, it has to come up. And with something like this, you are committing that, hey, for the next 3 months, I'm going to make it my goal to become a really good designer and to put together case studies for my portfolio and to be able to applying for jobs, which means you now are on this track where you are now moving towards becoming a designer and that's going to be your career. I think that's more the intimidating part, which is this is not meant to be a casual course, which is one thing. I realize that a lot of online learning is meant to be quite casual, which is great actually, because it lets you explore a lot of new areas. But this is a bit of a big step.
This is a big step because agreed. Adding also, I feel the once it is a big step also because one, the amount of time you're investing, it's not just a 1 week course or a 12-hour course. It's a 12-week course. It's a course that will happen over the period of 3 months. And this is a way to put your foot into the design industry. This is not just a course where you will get a certificate. This is a course where you'll end up getting a job and changing your life in terms of being a design professional. You're not going to be a design student anymore after this. You'll be a working design professional, either freelancing or interning or working as a full-time. That's up to you. But you will, since you're entering as a beginner and then graduating as a professional, that is a big step and you transform a lot. And all the cohort members who are there right now, you guys can comment on the chat right now if you want and talk about how you were in the beginning and how the program has changed you guys.
Yeah, man, for sure. I feel like it is like in some sense, I'm okay with the fact that a lot of people do think this way, that it's maybe not for beginners. I'm actually okay with that. The main reason is that there are going to be more cohorts and you need to apply when you're 100% sure about it, right? Which is what I would prefer as well, because then I can sort of feel that in your answers, in that you've given the responses. And in general, also there's this idea where you don't really need to be like, I'm going to start designing when I join. A lot of things around design, if you're interested in the field, even if you're not ready to make that jump, where you want to apply in this intensive course, the idea is still that you can passively do that through some of the YouTube content, right? Which is, we've got the free crash course on design there. You can learn Figma by yourself a little bit, so that when you eventually, let's say, do end up saying, hey, I'm serious about design, this is what I want to be doing, you already have a bit of an advantage where you can, instead of walking in the first week, you can just start running, right? If you know a couple of things already. So that way I feel like it's been designed to be beginner friendly, which is a complete beginner can do it. But then, as we've seen with our first cohort, there are a lot of people who are already in design, who've already, understood how to use Figma and a lot of the basics around it. In that case, I guess the biggest, if I had to guess, the biggest learning would then be the assignments, and maybe now the capstone projects as well. Yeah. I have one question here from Rajat, right?
Okay.
Design RV. So how do you start building a design component library when you don't have time, when deadlines are tight?
Cool, man. So I am assuming this is with reference to the neomorphism from the fabric, what I explained earlier. So we did not go with the aim of creating a design component library beforehand. This is something while we were designing and making the changes, we realized that we picked a couple of really important aspects of the app and we started converting that into neomorphism or like into copper synth. And once we decided the components that we were designing, we used those components in designing other user flows of the app. And slowly and steadily, while we were designing this, we came up with our design component library or our design system. So we did not go with the approach that, okay, first we'll design the system and then we'll use everywhere and check. We first checked it if it was looking good. And after that, at the end of all our apps and flows getting converted to copper synth, did we have a design system? Because if you're testing it later, you will have to redesign and get back to it. But if you're checking while designing and then at the end of it, you have summed all of it up or collated all of it, that way you don't have to get back. So you don't end up going backwards, but you're moving forwards.
Hmm.
So that is the approach that we took.
Yeah, I think one also interesting thing with a component library is that when the team is smaller, a lot of people, ask me about design systems. Like there was this point, how neomorphism was the thing everybody was talking about. Sometime last year, the thing everybody was talking about was design systems.
Right.
Like design systems was a big thing. But then I want people to also realize this, which is I've told this, privately to a lot of people. It's also the idea is that as a small team, the kind of design system needs you have are very different from what you would need as a big team. As a small team, you don't need a design system, you need a style guide. That's what you need, which is even if all your components are not perfect with constraints, with this, that, everything together, you still don't need a style guide because that's your bare minimum. And then once you have a style guide, you have a master file, which sort of has screens from the whole app. So that way, it's almost like even if you haven't componentized it, people can at least start picking it up. So for a small team, that is what you need. A lot of people get intimidated by design systems because they try to over-optimize at a small stage. At an extreme big level, when design systems are important, you need a dedicated person hired to design for design systems. Right? Maintaining a design system is a full-time job. Not just maintaining, but helping other people use it and figure out what components might need new versions. It's a full-time job. Sort of in the between is sort of where you should experiment, where at least the bare minimum, you'll have a style guide, you'll have your master file, and then you can start with components. You don't have to do it for your entire app. Maybe you can do it for an upcoming feature, and then slowly you can go backwards. Or you can do it for components that are more frequently used throughout the app, or more designers are working on this. If something that has just one designer working on it, very likely you don't need to componentize it. But multiple people are doing, maybe that's where you should do it. So overall, the answer is you need to think about the ROI. Not everything needs to be in your design system. Your design system can be partial for the longest time. And eventually, if you want a perfect design system, I think the only solution is to hire someone full-time for it. Yeah.
Definitely, man. Also, I feel these words are used very interchangeably, although each term means very different. A component library is very different from a design system, and that is also very different from
a style guide or a market guide.
Exactly. These three things are very, very different. For example, like right now, I use the words design systems when mentioning CRED so that you guys could understand better. But we don't have a design system. We never created one, something as comprehensive as a design system, because we did not require one yet. Because a company like Uber or Microsoft, which has like 300, 400 designers maybe, and design teams all over the world, multiple design teams, would need something like a design system. But for a small team like maybe CRED or Swiggy and Unacademy, a style guide is what is enough for us and not a design system.
True.
So you need to understand the difference between these three: a style guide, a design system, a component library, what these are and when they are supposed to be used. Just like type, font, typography or lettering, these three, or typeface, all these are very different, but people just assume that all of them are the same.
Yeah. Same with copywriting and UX writing, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, bro, that happens a lot, which is something which needs to change.
Man, so we have about 10 minutes left. Folks, if you have any more questions, in general with design, or if you want to talk about masterclass, I think what we can do now is we can probably get into a rapid fire, Mayank.
Let's do it.
Rapid fire with the very first video. I think we didn't do it in between.
Yeah.
We really enjoyed it. So let's do a rapid fire. Thanks for the Cohort 1 members. Thanks for the positive feedback. This really helps a lot of people who are watching this. As you mentioned in the previous cohort, there were students who already were from the design industry. Will beginners feel lost if other students are very familiar? The idea is you can never be very familiar because the course has a good amount of breadth as well as depth. So it's almost like even if there are some parts of it that you already know, there are other parts that you want to know. So the point of a cohort also is to be able to learn from each other. There are some things that you will find very easy that somebody else will be struggling with. They'll find it difficult. You might find it easy. It might go a lot of different ways. So the point of a cohort is also that we're going to have teams. We're going to have teams where you're going to have solo assignments as well as team assignments. This is almost like working in a design team at a company. Cohort 1, we had just one team-based project. Cohort 2, every alternate project is going to be team-based. So we're going to be doing a lot more activity. What is going to be interesting is this is like working with somebody. So even if there is something that you don't know, you get to watch the other person do their thing. And you can just learn from observing how they do it. So that's one of the reasons why I don't want to make it 100% beginner cohort, 100% experts, 100% middle of the career. That mix is super useful.
We are taking too long for rapid fire questions.
Oh shit, I forgot it was a rapid fire.
Also, answering your question, Dave, I'll just answer it in 10 seconds. Last night, we had a discussion in the chat room where 10 designers were looking as someone else's design while I was giving feedback. It's a very collaborative learning. Everyone levels up and learns from each other. That's it.
Okay, let's do rapid fire. I forgot it was rapid fire. Okay. How to not make a generic case study. Quick answer. Don't try to copy somebody else's format. That's what makes it generic. If you think there's a standard format, your case study will follow this is getting too long, bro, this answer. Your case study will follow your process. Okay.
Okay, my answer is write the case study first, the way on the basis of your personalized learnings, your difficulties, and what your process was, and then learn how to structure it on the basis of other people's case studies. Don't take learnings of other people's case studies. Mention your own. That's it.
When do you decide to move from style guide to design system? Very simple answer I can give you is less than 5 designers. Typically, you don't need a proper design system. You can make it work. More than 10 designers or 15 designers, you probably need a proper design system.
Same. I don't think there's much to add from my side as well. It's just that.
Cool. By when will we find out if you're accepted? If you've already applied, check your inbox. I'm already doing a lot of back and forth. If not, within the next 1 or 2 weeks. Half the cohort is almost already full. Does copywriting make a designer good, or is it okay to have a separate copywriter? Mayank, go for it.
It makes a designer good because you creating your designs, you know what context or what kind of text should be there in your design. You asking your copywriter separately to come at the end of your design process and then just keep adding text that is to be added does not make sense.
My answer to this is that a lot of design is communication and persuasion. A landing page is supposed to convince somebody. That convincing happens with visuals as well as copy. You need to know copywriting. Light mode or dark mode, what do you choose? Dude, I'm dark mode all the time. My iOS is default dark mode. My Mac OS is default dark mode. Mayank?
Yeah, bro, dark mode. I won't go, although all devices that I use are dark mode, I wouldn't stick to it in terms of designing. If I feel light mode can be used better, I choose whatever works best.
Cool. There's no more questions, so we can slow down a little bit till more come up. Yeah. Folks, we have 5 minutes remaining. So final questions. Oh, I forgot about this. What is a good workshop idea to get people interested in UI UX design? This is very interesting. I'm assuming you're in college or something. I would say try to think of a problem statement. Try to maybe find one online or make it yourself and get people to do it in groups, not solo, do it in groups. What would you say, Mayank?
Yeah, man, that's a good idea. One, you could also get them introduced to what it is and also either hold a workshop where you introduce the software, for example, giving a walkthrough of Figma, or you could do a walkthrough of designing a app, like a small app or a small user flow and making everyone do it while you're teaching. That's a great way to get people interested.
Yeah. No more questions for now, but I think some more are going to come up. Let's see.
So while more people are sending their questions, getting back to the OG behavior, guys, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, increase the likes so that the YouTube algorithm can help us reach more of you guys.
For sure. Mayank, I wanted to ask you this also. I was planning to ask you privately, but I'll ask you now. We've recorded a bunch of episodes for season 3.
Right.
How many do we have so far?
So far, by the end of this week, we'll have 7.
Got it. So you want to start season 3? Like, other than the live videos, do you want to start that?
We can do that, bro, but we were thinking of creating clips for Whiteboard Live.
True. People in the comments. So we have about 7 episodes already recorded, ready to go. You might be surprised, but yeah, we do a lot of planning around this to do it as a batch thing at once so that we can be consistent. When should we launch it, right? Earliest we would launch it is Monday. So folks, if you want to see it on Monday, post it right now.
Guys, it's totally up to you guys. If you guys want it on Monday, I will make sure I edit the first episode and upload it on Monday.
Yeah, because the original plan, I think, was to do it in September, right?
August end, September beginning, yeah.
Mm.
Whenever we were done with at least like 8 or 9 episodes, we would have decided that, okay, we'll upload.
Mm. Cool, man. We have about 3 minutes left. I'm not able to see any more chats for some reason.
Okay, everyone's saying Monday. Guys, I appreciate the enthu, but like try to be a bit more like open for giving me some more time as well. But okay, fine. If a lot of people after this live as well, I want to see how many of you guys comment on the video that you guys want to see the season 3 episode of Whiteboard on Monday. If we see that we have more comment, like if we see the trade-off between the likes and the comments that are there, for those who want to see the episode on Monday, I will make sure the first episode of season 3 goes on Monday. But if there aren't many, sorry guys, it'll go later on whenever we decide.
Yeah, I think if not, it's a couple of weeks away, a few weeks away. I have a few more questions. I'm not able to put them on screen for some reason right now.
Okay.
But let me talk about these. Can you take a masterclass with a day job? 100%. A lot of the folks in the chat right now do have day jobs right now. It's a mix of people who are in college, recently graduated, as well as people in roles already. How much estimated time per day? I can tell you per week, it's at least a couple of hours. The reason is you have live classes, which is just watching, but then there's also actually doing it in Figma as part, not just Figma, but actually solving these assignments. Which does take some time. So I'd say a few hours. Depending on what your situation is, you can ping me, but I'll let you know. A few hours is typically that. And I would say it's still a little variable, which is a lot of people have the time to iterate and go 100% on their assignments. Some people don't, and they end up doing it a little bit later. So that's the scene. How many classes do we have? So the way we've designed it is we have a Discord classroom 24/7. We have 2 live classes every week. These live classes happen on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 9 p.m., which is in the evening. These are about an hour or 2 hours. A lot of the recent ones have been going 2 hours plus. And between these 2 classes, there's a lot of work that happens. So we have design office hours, which is just like a back and forth Q&A discussions. For the upcoming cohort, we're going to have some of our alumni coming in to help you guys. We're also going to be getting a couple of external mentors who are coming on board. They're going to be assigned teams. So that should be super interesting. Overall, there are 4 modules in the whole program, 3 weeks each. Every module roughly has about 2 assignments. Yeah, that's the plan so far. How much time do I have to confirm my seat? If you're shortlisted, you have 3 days. If you are shortlisted. So I'll be reaching out to a lot of the folks. I haven't gone through 100% applications yet. Mayank, I think our time is up. Any final?
A great life, man. This from starting off with not knowing what to talk about to discussing the case studies, discussing the 10K program, sharing you guys a lot of insider stuff about season 3. This was great. Keep sharing, keep liking, subscribing, and take a screenshot of our live, post it on Instagram.
Screenshot.
Tag 10K designers, tag Abhinav, tag me. We want to see as many mentions on our Instagram as the people who are watching. Do this right now. Great having you guys. See you next week.
See you all. Good night. If you're interested in the masterclass, this is the link. And you can always, of course, feel free to DM me for questions. See you next Thursday, same channel. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.